Section 74 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Paradiso, Canto 7. The second heaven. Mercury. The happiness of beneficent activity. Ambitious spirits.
Hosanna, O thou holy God of hosts, that with thy clarity dost brighter make the happy fires of these celestial realms.
As thus to his own song he turned himself, by me that substance was seen singing now, o'er which a double light two folds itself. And to their dance both that one and the rest addressed themselves, and then like swiftest sparks with sudden distance veiled themselves from me. In doubt I was, and to myself kept saying, Tell it to her, tell, I said, my lady who with her sweet distillings slakes my thirst. That reverence, though, which masters all of me by the mere syllables of be and ice, bowed me like one that's overcome by sleep. A short while Beatrice endured me thus, then lighting up my face with such a smile as even in fire would bless one, she began,
As I am unmistakably aware how a just vengeance could have been avenged with justice, hath occasioned thee to doubt. But I shall quickly liberate thy mind, hence listen, for my words will now bestow on thee the present of a mighty truth. By not accepting for the power that wills a helpful curb, the man who was not born, damning himself, damned all his progeny. Wherefore the human race lay sick below in serious sin for many centuries, until the word of God was pleased to send to where the nature, which had wandered far from its Creator, to his self he joined, by the mere act of his eternal love. Now turn thy sight to what is argued now. This nature, thus united to its Maker, was, as when first created, pure and good, but through its own fault was in banishment exiled from paradise, because it turned out of the path of truth and its own life. As to the suffering, therefore, which the cross afforded, none so justly ever bit, if measured by the nature thus assumed, and likewise none was ever so unjust, considering who the person was that suffered, within whom such a nature was conjoined. From one act, therefore, issued things diverse. For one same death pleased both the Jews and God. It caused the earth to quake, and opened heaven. No longer strange should it appear to thee henceforth, when it is said that a just revenge was by a just court afterward avenged. But I perceive that now, from thought to thought, thy mind is in a knot tied up, from which with great desire it seeks to free itself. Thou sayest, what I hear I clearly see. But from me hidden is why God should will for our redemption just this way alone. Buried, my brother, lieth this decree from all men's eyesight, whose intelligence hath not in love's flame reached maturity. However, inasmuch as on this mark great is the gazing, and but little seen, I'll say why this one was the worthiest way. Goodness divine, which spurneth from itself all envy, burning in itself so sparkles that its eternal beauties it displays. Whatever from it is immediately distilled hath afterward no end, for when it sets its seal, its stamp is not removed. Whatever from it is immediately rained down is wholly free, for that lies not under the power of secondary things, since most like it gives it greatest pleasure, because the holy fire which lighteth all things is brightest in what most resembles it. The human creature is by all these things advantaged. Hence, if one of them be lacking, it needs must fall from its nobility. Nothing but sin deprives it of its freedom, and maketh it unlike the highest good. Hence little is it whitened by its light, and to its dignity it ne'er returns, unless, where sin has emptied, it fill up for evil pleasures, with just penalties. When in its seed your nature wholly sinned, it was of all these dignities deprived, as well as banished far from paradise, nor could they be regained by any path, if with due subtlety thou pay attention, except by crossing one of these two fords. Either that of his courtesy alone God should forgive it, or that by itself mankind should for its folly make amends. Fixed as attentively upon my words as thou art able, thrust now thine eye within the eternal council's deep abyss. Since finite, man could never make amends, because unable in humility by new obedience to descend as far as, disobeying, he had meant to mount. And this the reason is why man was barred from making satisfaction by himself. It hence behooved that God by his own ways should reinstate man in his perfect life, by one, I mean, or else by both at once. But since so much more grateful is the work a workman does, the more it represents the goodness of the heart from which it comes, goodness divine, which on the world imprints its seal, was pleased to move by all its paths to raise you up again. Nor hath there been, nor will there ever be, by either way, between the first of days and the last of nights, so high and so magnificent a plan, for God was far more bountiful in giving himself to make man fit to raise himself, than had he only of himself forgiven. Therefore all other means had fallen short of justice, if the Son of God had not humbled himself, incarnate to become. But, wholly to fulfill thine every wish, I'll now go back to clarify one point, that thou mayst see as plainly there as I. Thou sayest, I see that water, nay, I see that fire, and air, and earth, and all their mixtures become corrupt, and but a little while endure, and yet created things were these. If, therefore, what said above were true, safe from corruption ought these things to be. The angels, brother, and the perfect world in which thou now art, may be called created, such as they are in their perfected state. The elements, however, thou hast named, and those things which, by means of them, are made, by a created virtue are informed. Created was the matter which they have. Created was the informing influence in all these stars, which round about them move. The rays and motion of the holy lights draw from pure matter's potentiality the soul of every brute and every plant. But without agency doth kindliness supreme breathe your life forth, and with itself enamors it so greatly that thereafter it always longs for it. And furthermore, thou canst from this infer your resurrection, if thou recall how human flesh was made, when both of man's first parents were created.
End of Paradiso, Canto 7. Section 75 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Paradiso, Canto 8. The Third Heaven. Venus. The happiness of love. The spirits of lovers.
The world was at its peril wont to think that in the third of Epicycle's circling fair Cypria beamed her sensual love abroad. The ancient peoples, therefore, in their ancient error, with sacrifice and votive cry, honoured not her alone, but with Dione Cupid as well, the former as her mother, the latter as her son, and used to say that he had sat of old in Dido's lap, and took from her, from whom I here begin, the name-word of the star at which the sun looks fondly, now behind and now in front. Of our ascending to it I was not aware, but that we in it were, my lady, whom grown more fair I saw, assured me fully. And then, as in a flame a spark is seen, and as within a voice is heard, when one remains and the other goes and comes, so I in that light other lamps beheld, whirling with greater speed or less, I think, according to each lamp's eternal vision. Out of cold clouds there ne'er descended winds, or visible or not, so swiftly moving, that they would not appear restrained and slow to one who had perceived those lights divine draw near to us, when they had ceased the circling, among the exalted seraphs first begun. And in the foremost to appear,
Hosanna, 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 Hosanna,
resounded so that I have never since lacked the desire of hearing it again. One then drew nearer to us, and alone began,
We all are ready at thy pleasure, that thou mayst have thy joy of all of us. In one ring, with one circling and one thirst, we with the heavenly principalities revolve, to whom once from the world thou saidst, Ye who the third heaven by your knowledge move, and we're so full of love, that, thee to please, a little quiet will not seem less sweet.
After mine eyes had toward my lady turned with reverent questioning, and she herself had with herself contented and assured them, back toward the light they turned, which of itself had made such promise, and Who are ye, say, was what I voiced with great affection toned. And how much greater did I see it grow in size and quality, with that new joy which when I spoke was added to its joys. Grown thus, it said to me,
The world below had me not long, but had it done so longer, much evil that will be would not have been. The gladness which around me radiates, and like a creature by its own silk swathed, conceals me here, now keeps me hidden from thee. Much didst thou love me, and good cause hadst thou therefore, since had I been on earth, much more would I have shown thee than the leaves of love. That left-hand bank, which by the Rhone is washed just after it is mingled with the Sorgue, looked in due time to have me as its lord, as did the Ausonian horn, which is with Bari, Gaeta, and Crotona towned, and whence the Tronto and Verde bore into the sea. Upon my brow already blazed the crown of that land which the Danube irrigates, when it abandons its Germanic banks, and fair Trinacria, which grows dark with smoke, between Pachinus's and Pelorus's capes, over the gulf which Eurus vexes most, not through Tiphys, but through nascent Sotha, would still be waiting for its kings, through me from Charles and Rudolph sprung, had not ill rule, which always angers subject peoples, stirred Palermo to the point of shouting Die. And did my brother but foresee this now, the greedy poverty would he avoid of Catalonia, that it harm him not. For verily provision must be made by him or by another, that no load be further laid upon his burdened bark. His nature, which descended mean from one which liberal was, would such retainers need, as would not care to fill their coffers up.
Since I, my lord, believe the joy profound thy speech infuses in me is by thee perceived, where every good thing both begins and ends, as I perceive it, all the more grateful it is. And I am also glad that this thou seest by looking up at God. As thou hast made me happy, make it clear, for thou hast moved me by thy words to doubt, how out of sweet seed bitter seed can spring. This I to him, and he,
If I can show a truth to thee, to that which thou dost ask, thou'lt hold thy face, as thou dost now thy back. The good which turns and sateth all the realm through which thou mountest, makes his providence a power within these mighty bodies here. And not alone are natures in that mind foreseen, which of its own self perfect is, but they themselves, and with them their well-being. Hence all this bow shoots forth falls predisposed unto an end foreseen, as would an arrow aimed at its destined mark. Were this not so, the heaven through which thou now art journeying, in such a way would its effects produce, that ruins they would be, not works of art. Nor can this be, unless the intellects which move these stars are faulty, and the first, who failed to make them perfect, faulty too. Wouldst have this truth become more white for thee?
and I, No, truly, for I see that nature, in what is needful, cannot get fatigued. Then he,
Now say, would it be worse on earth for man if he were not a citizen?
Yes, I replied, nor do I here ask why.
And can he be, unless men there below in different ways for different functions live? No, if thereon your teacher writeth well.
So far he came, deducing thus, then closed,
Because of this the roots of your effects must different be. Hence one is Solon born, Xerxes another, and Melchizedek another, and another he who lost his son while flying through the air. Revolving nature, which is a seal to mortal wax, performs her function well, but no distinction makes between one and any other dwelling place. It hence results that Esau in his seed differs from Jacob, while Quirinus comes from such a common father that ascribed to Mars he is. A generated nature, unless divine foresight prevailed, would always follow along its generator's path. Now that which was behind thee is before, but that thou know that thou dost give me pleasure, I'd have a corollary mental thee. Nature, whene'er she finds a destiny discordant with her, like all other seed in soil unsuited to it, always fails. And if the world down there but set its mind upon the basal plan which nature lays and followed it, 'twould have its people good. But to religion ye now rest aside one that is born to gird him with a sword, and make a king of one that's fit to preach. The course ye take is, therefore, off the road.
End of Paradiso, Canto 8. Section 76 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Paradiso, Canto 9. The Third Heaven. Venus. The Happiness of Love. The Spirits of Lovers.
After thy Charles, fair Clemence, had resolved my doubts, he told me of the treacheries his offspring were to undergo, and said,
Be silent now, and let the years roll by.
Hence I can only say to you that tears will justly follow on your people's wrongs. And now the spirit of that holy light back to the sun which filleth it had turned, as to the good which sateth everything. Alas, ye souls deceived and impious creatures, who from such goodness tear your hearts away, and turn your temples unto vanity. And hereupon another of those splendours in my direction came, and signified by brightening outwardly its wish to please me. The eyes of Beatrice, which as before were fixed upon me, gave me full assurance of her beloved assent to my desire. Prithee, blessed spirit, satisfy my wish at once, I therefore said, and give me proof that what I think I can reflect in thee. Whereat the light, which still was new to me, out of its depths, whence it had sung before, went on, like one whom doing good delights.
In that part of Italia's evil land, which 'tween Rialto's island and the Brentas and Piave's fountain-heads is situated, a hill ascends, nor rises very high, whence once a torch came down, which terribly assaulted all the country round about. From one same root both I and it were born. Cunitza called, I here refulgent am, because the light of the star vanquished me. But gladly I forgive myself the cause of my allotment here, which grieves me not, which to your common people might seem strange. Of this your brilliant jewel of our heaven, which nearest is to me, a mighty fame remains behind, and, ere it die away, this 100th year will yet quintupled be. See whether one should excellent become, so that the first may leave another life. But thus the present mob, the Adige and Tagliamento's streams enclose, think not, nor doth it yet, though scourged by wars, repent. But at the marsh 'twill happen soon that Padua will change the waters which Vicenza bathe, because its folk were restive to their duty. And where the Sile and Cagnano mate, one lordeth it, and goes with head erect, for trapping whom even now the net is made. Feltro will yet bewail the faithlessness of its bad shepherd, which will be so foul that Malta was not entered for the like. Too large would be the wine-vat which could hold all the Ferrara blood, and weary one who tried to weigh it ounce by ounce. Which shall this courteous priest's donation be, to prove his party loyalty? And gifts like this will with the country's life conform. Mirrors there are above, ye call them thrones, whence on us God as judge reflects his light, so that these words of ours seem good to us.
She here ceased speaking, then intent she seemed on something else, because she set herself to wheel around, as previously she did. The other joy, already known to me as something noble, in my sight became a perfect ruby smitten by the sun. Splendour up yonder is by joy acquired, as smiles are here, but down below a shade outwardly darkens when the mind grows sad. God seeth all, I said, and thy will so in hymns itself, blessed spirit, that no wish can rob thee of itself. Therefore thy voice, which, with the song of those devoted fires, who with their 6 wings make themselves a cowl, is always charming heaven, why gives it not contentment to my wishes? I indeed would not await thy asking me, if I indeed myself as thou in meest thee.
The greatest valley o'er which water spreads,
thereat his words began,
except the sea, which forms a garland round the earth, extends counter the sun so far 'tween alien shores, that it can make meridian of a place, where it is wont to make horizon first. On that sea's shore I dwelt, 'tween Ebro's mouth and Magris, which, for but a short way, parts the Tuscan region from the Genoese. With almost equal set and rise of the sun, sits both Bugea and the city whence I was, which with its blood once warmed its port. Folco that people called me, unto whom my name was known, and this heaven is by me impressed, as I was formerly by it. For Bellu's daughter, when she troubled both Sychaeus and Creusa, burned no more than I, as long as it beseemed my hair. nor did that Rhodopean maid, whose love Demophoon deceived, nor yet Alcides, while in his heart he kept Iole locked. Yet we are not repenting here, but smiling, not for the sin, which to our minds returns not, but for the worth which ordered and foresaw. Here at the art we gaze which beautifies so great at work, and only see the goodness whereby the world above turns that below. But so thou they mayst bear away with thee thy wishes all fulfilled, which in this sphere were born, still further must I needs proceed. Who is within this light thou fain wouldst know, which right here at my very side is sparkling, as rays of sunlight shine in limpid water? Know, then, that Rahab finds her rest therein, and to our order being joined, with her it stamps itself in a supreme degree. By this heaven, where the shadowier world makes ends in a point, before all other souls was she received, that triumph with the Christ. It well behooved to leave her in some heaven, to be a poem of that great victory, which by both hands was won, because she favoured Joshua's first glory in the Holy Land, which little stirs the memory of the Pope. Thy town, which is a plant once sowed by him, who first against his Maker turned his back, and through whose envy many tears are shed, brings forth and spreads abroad the cursed flower, which, having of the shepherd made a wolf, hath caused both sheep and lamb to go astray. The Gospels and great doctors are for this despised, and only the decretals conned, as is apparent by their margins state. On this are Pope and Cardinals intent, their thoughts turn not toward Nazareth, where Gabriel once oped his wings, but both the Vatican and all the other chosen parts of Rome, of old the burial place of militia, which followed in the path which Peter trod, will soon be freed from this adultery.
End of Paradiso Canto 9.